boy, Mitt Romney is in just a world of trouble here with his 47% remark, although there is a fairly loud right-wing conservative element that is telling him, hey, double down on this stuff. This is, this is red meat for the base. Pat Buchanan loves this kind of stuff. Go for it. Let's ask Mark Williams what his thoughts are on this. Conservative commentator, talk radio host, former chair of the Tea Party Express. MarkTalk.com is his website. Mark Williams, welcome back to the program.
Well, thank you, Tom. Always a pleasure.
So, Mark, here we have 47% of America. Actually, it's 46 and change. About half of them, a little less than half of them, a little more than a third of them, actually, are retired people. About 4 or 5% of them are people who are just plain old flat out unemployed, screwed, toast, whatever. And, the rest are people who are making so little or who have children so they don't pay federal income taxes. Romney's writing these guys off? You guys are trashing them?
Oh, no, I don't think he's writing them off at all. I think this is an excellent opportunity for him to make the distinction between his policies, Republican policies, and Obama's policies. I mean, the contrast between what Mitt Romney had to say and the old audio now of Barack Obama saying he's in favor of redistribution couldn't be more stark. What Romney has got to do is resist what his handlers are telling him to do, which is to back off, and he's got to use this, as the president might say, as a teachable moment. And it can be demonstrated by asking that 47% one simple question. Will you ever get rich taking a handout, or would you get rich if you were free to pursue your dreams, get a job, and pay taxes?
Okay, well, in 1862, when President Abraham Lincoln, the first Republican president, instituted the first U.S. income tax, which started at an income and inflation adjusted for today's dollars of $19,000 a year. If you made less than $19,000 a year, you paid nothing in income tax. If you paid $19,000 a year, you paid 1%. If you made over $100,000 a year in today's money, you paid 2%. If you made over about $400,000 a year in today's money, you paid 3%. That was the first progressive income tax. At the same time, Abraham Lincoln was giving away land, up to 40 acres, to anybody who wanted it west of the Mississippi to encourage settlement of that land, which created this huge westward ho movement. Without discussing the Native Americans' opinion about this, but still, here he was putting in place a progressive income tax. Most Americans did not pay it; only about the top 5% were paying that income tax at the time. And at the same time, he was passing out free land. Are you saying that Abraham Lincoln was a welfare president too?
No, the vast pioneered all kinds of industries having to do with space and high tech. There's a vast
NASA didn't pass money out to people. It didn't give people free land. Check. I don't see the difference between saying, yes, we will give you a Pell Grant to send you to school, or we will give you a tax break. I mean, a large portion of that 47% are people who are not paying federal income taxes. They're certainly paying FICA taxes. They're certainly paying payroll taxes. They're paying state taxes. They're paying sales taxes. They're paying property taxes. They're paying gasoline taxes.
What Obama's talking about is...
But many of those people are not paying federal income taxes because they've got kids.
And what Barack Obama is talking about is discouraging the collection of taxes by taking money away from those who are earning high incomes and distributing those funds among other people in the way of not.
But I'm saying we've been doing this since 1862. George Washington was actually the first to do this, although we didn't have a direct income tax in his time. But he was, he was collecting taxes. 100% of the cost of the federal government came from duties, from tariffs and duties, and about half of that was not on foreign imported goods; it was on state-to-state imported goods. So he was collecting taxes from the makers, as it were, in our society, and he signed, at his own encouragement, he signed legislation creating a home and food and medical care for the poor here in Washington, D.C. Right. George Washington, we've been doing this since the beginning of this republic.
Shouldn't do such things. Well, what's at issue here is where it gets out of whack and out of balance, and where we have people who... Well, let me ask you this. If Mr. Obama is successful and manages to confiscate the wealth of the so-called 1% and redistribute it, where are the...
Did Richard Nixon confiscate the wealth of the 1%?
Where are the...
No, a serious question, Mark. Did Richard Nixon, the top tax rate during Richard Nixon's presidency was 91%. Was he confiscating the wealth of the 1% of the top?
Yeah. And at what
I don't
point-
think so. There was no shortage of people getting rich during Richard Nixon's presidency. So rich, in fact, that they could hand him $500,000 bribes.
At what point does the person who makes a great deal of money decide that it's no longer worth it to do that because he's working for the government?
At the point where they're making after they've made their first $1 million. That's how it was when Richard Nixon was president. And what those people did at that point was they didn't stop working. What they said was, okay, I've made my $1 million. You know, like Mitt Romney, actually, or George Romney. Actually, George Romney took a whole lot less than $1 million for most of his presidency of American Motors. Then they say, okay, I've made my $1 million. Beyond that, I'm going to be paying 91%. So I'm not going to take that income. I'm going to keep that in my business, and I'm going to hire more people. And the result of that in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s was that we saw an explosion of the middle class, the largest industrialization in the United States, the only time in the history of this country where you had 4 consecutive decades where GDP growth averaged over 3.2%, and then Ronald Reagan came along and dropped that top tax rate, and all of a sudden the rich started playing casino with their money, and we haven't seen 3.2% decade since then.
Well, first of all, the tax collections went up under Ronald Reagan.
Tax collections always go up. It's called inflation.
What leads to prosperity, jobs, and advancement? Taking money from those who earn it, or giving it to people.
Are you genuinely trying to tell me, Mark, that the guy?
We're not talking about charity. We're talking about
no. Hang on just a second. You just laid down a marker, Mark. Let me challenge you on this. You just said taking money away from people who earn it. Are you genuinely trying to tell me that when Bill McGuire was running United Healthcare and he made $1.7 billion, $170 million a year over a 10-year period, $1.78 billion, that anybody who is just a CEO and just drawing a salary is worth $170 million. That's almost $1 million for every working day of the year. What could anybody possibly? And why should he make that much more than the guy who is doing brain surgery or the surgeon who operated on my wife?
Well, let's put it this way. Yoko Ono's worth $500 million, and she's an Occupy Wall Streeter and has absolutely no talent.
You are changing the subject, Mark. How can anybody justify an income like that as a salary?
What do you think that Michael Moore makes? What do you think that these people make?
Michael Moore is an entrepreneur. He owns his own business.
Success. No matter what side of the
okay, I got it. You're opposed to entrepreneurs, and Yoko Ono is an entrepreneur. She owns her own business. But I'm talking about the guy who is the CEO of United Healthcare, the new one, Stephen J. Hemsley. He's taken over $1 billion.
Success. Why is success?
I don't think that's success. I think that's theft.
Why is it not something to strive for, as opposed to strive for a subsistence?
Because we don't live in a robber baron society anymore.
Dependency or excellence?
No, robber barons or egalitarianism.
I think you should be able to get yourself out of poverty by having opportunity. I don't
disagree, and I think anybody earning over $1 million a year should say, okay, that's enough.
Really? Okay.
I really do. I think that we should go back to the tax rate that Richard Nixon liked, that Dwight Eisenhower liked.
All I can say is if you're on the government dole, you're the property of the taxpayer, and that's me, so you got to test my...
Well, count me among Dwight Eisenhower and Richard Nixon in terms of tax policy. Mark Williams, marktalk.com. You can check it out. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Tom.
16 minutes past the hour. We'll be back.